All right. Next up, have you heard of BetterHelp?
No, I haven't.
So BetterHelp is one of those online services that tries to get you to instead of go see a therapist in person or see well basically like either connect you or like try to use algorithms, and like they're trying to be like a very modern service, but the way that they're able to sell your data is actually really interesting. So there's lots of privacy regulation, like HIPAA, for example, in the United States that prevents healthcare providers from selling your information. For example, you can't go to the doctor and then have them turn around and be like, hey, Facebook, this guy is mega depressed. Like, you should hit this guy with some advertisements for stuff that depressed people love. That would not be legal. But and the same is true of insurance providers, but some of these third-party data processors or some of these third-party providers are not actually covered under this, and they can do whatever they want. So it's really interesting because while there's really strict rules for certain people, other people are totally allowed to do whatever they want. And this guy made a TikTok that got replied to by BetterHelp, and they were like, we would not do that. Refer to the privacy policy and you will see what exactly it is we do. And when you refer to the privacy policy, it literally says we sell your data to marketers. We share our data. Well, it says we share your medical history data, like stuff like that, with our advertising partners. So if you are like a millennial and someone who likes, trendy online services, maybe like online banks and stuff, and you're trying to maybe try out another one of these things, you could end up basically letting, in your most private moments, like when you're vulnerable, letting advertisers basically know like, you are more willing to buy certain kinds of stuff. And you may find yourself inundated with ads for certain things because you have mental health issues. And this gets into a corner of these sorts of businesses where often processing and selling data is a very, very, very good way for startups to get lots of investment. And if you look at their privacy policy and it says they can do it, they probably put that in there for a reason because it's super profitable. If you can offer highly targeted advertising services, then that means you can make a ton of money, even if your original business model might not be that profitable. So maybe look at Facebook, for example. So really, some of these startups are presenting themselves as health services, but they're not bound by the same privacy laws. So I personally think this is pretty abhorrent because when people go for help, they're lured in by promises of like this having a low barrier to entry, you can get started really quickly. People think that it meets the same standards as traditional health services. But because there's these loopholes, you really need to stop and take a look at the privacy policies for some of these things that are matching you with providers or whatever else, but they're not providers themselves. They're not insurance companies. They're still retaining data and they're still collecting it because they can. There's nothing specifically preventing them from having this data. And that to me is a big risk for people who might be in a vulnerable place and might not want to let every person who's trying to suck all the dollars out of them in their weakest moment know that. So, this also, as soon as the data is out there, you never know who's going to get it. Insurance companies could buy this data to know that maybe you have pre-existing conditions that are going to be expensive for them in the future. So it's just worth noting where your healthcare data goes and who is protected and who isn't. Most people don't even know how to spell HIPAA, let alone who it actually applies to. I'm dead serious. So for all the people you hear ranting about HIPAA and being upset about it, very few people actually understand that while this law is very, very protective around certain people like healthcare providers and insurance providers, it has absolutely no claim on most people unless you're in a very specific category. And once you start interacting in a health sense with a business that doesn't have those restrictions, you can almost guarantee that business will sell your data if it allows them to profit. And businesses like money. So just be careful of this sort of thing. This was one of those examples of a viral TikTok that actually brought attention to a really good problem. Some of these startups are not actually making money directly off of the things that they offer. They're making money off of processing data and by having lots of users. So keep that in mind when you're signing up for one of these trendy new services.